we have a wonderful guest joining us today, John Livesay, who is a 4 times best-selling author and a sales expert. In fact, I think it was Inc. magazine branded you the pitch whisperer. At what point in your journey did you discover the power of storytelling here?
When you tell a story, there are basically 4 parts. And this is the secret to making a story compelling. If the stakes aren't high enough, then nobody cares about the story. So many of my years I was spent, as soon as this happens, I'll be happy. I was comparing myself, and that is the gateway drug to the imposter syndrome. The line I came up with for people who have a promotion and have a little bit of imposter syndrome is, the majority of the people I speak to are people in sales. I would say the number one thing that they get wrong is they push out facts and figures instead of telling stories and wonder why they don't get traction.
Welcome everyone to the Longevity Lounge. My name is Ben, I'm your host.
And I'm Caylee, I'm your co-host.
And today we have a wonderful guest joining us today, John Livesay, who is a 4 times best-selling author and a sales expert. In fact, his recent book, The Sale is in the Tail, it just really packs a punch, along with his other books, of course, on helping us craft the perfect message. And I love this. You've been featured many times, in the press, television, magazines, and what have you. And I think it was Inc. magazine that branded you the pitch whisperer. I love that.
They did indeed, and I liked it so much I trademarked it. So now when I give keynote talks to sales teams, they say, and today we have the pitch whisperer here. So I have a story if you want to hear it later on about how that came about.
I would love that, but I want to jump in. I always love the kind of the origin story. You've got a literally a incredible career track record in sales, award-winning record here. At what point in your journey did you discover the power of storytelling here?
I think when I was selling advertising for Condé Nast, which is a publishing house that puts out Vanity Fair, GQ, Wired, Arc Digest, Bon Appetit, so many brands that people know and love. I was responsible for getting big advertisers like Lexus and Banana Republic to advertise in my magazine. And Lexus's agency would say, we looked at 20 different titles. We've narrowed it down to 10. We're going to run in 3 of them. You each get to come in for 30 minutes and tell us why we should be in your magazine. But do not talk about numbers. We've already analyzed that. We know your reader's income and how many circulation there is. And half of the reps were deers in headlight. I can't talk about numbers. And I realized that whoever told the best story of what event we could do to support the advertising that was very targeted to the Lexus's launch target audience and the brand would be the one that won. And that's what got me on this journey of, it's about storytelling. And I had worked at an ad agency before my sales job at Condé Nast, taking movies that had not maybe done so well theatrically and repositioning them in a commercial for home video back in the day of Blockbuster. So that's where I honed my storytelling skills, because the same movie, just different clips make you want to rent or buy it if you didn't see it in the theater, and then applying that to what story can I tell that makes my pitch irresistible.
I love that. That would be a frightening experience to be in that type of a scenario where they say, don't talk data, don't talk numbers.
Don't talk numbers.
Yeah.
And it's back to back. It's media day. So
Yeah.
you're on at 9, somebody's at 9:30, somebody's at 10. And that's the joy of storytelling, Ben, is when you are the one that's told a story that's got 3 elements to it: clear, concise, and compelling. Why does it have to be clear? If you use a bunch of acronyms and confuse people, confused mind says no. Why does it have to be concise? Because after they hear all these pitches, they're going to have the meeting after the meeting and say, well, what do you think? They all sound the same. Let's go with the cheapest. Well, that was never going to be me. But if you've told a story that's concise enough for them to remember and repeat, they become your inside brand ambassadors. And then finally, why does it have to be compelling? So that people feel something. And that's what I love teaching people, is how to tell a story that not only is clear and concise, but makes you feel something because people buy emotionally and then back it up with logic, no matter how expensive the product is.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. As you look back over the many years that you've been involved in the space doing this, right? And
Yes.
because you're the master of the trade here, right? This is, yeah, we're talking to the best in the business here.
Uh,
Was there a person or a story that you experienced or connected with that just really anchored this for you and made this principle of storytelling really click?
mm. Well, one of my mentors is Tim Sanders, who is also an amazing speaker, writer. He wrote Love is the Killer app several years ago, and he had a title at Yahoo called Chief Solutions Officer,
Mm,
which I just loved. And he really talked about your ability to sum up a book you've read and share the essence of a story to someone makes you someone that people want to be around. And that concept of your ability to tell stories creates value that people want to have in their network. So you're not pushing out facts or figures about yourself or a product, but in fact, oh, I just finished reading this book. Here's 3 things I learned about it that you might want to read, or at least I don't have time to read it, but now I have the essence of that book. That's what really was the trigger for me
mm.
of watching somebody use this concept that, leaders are readers, but you take that one step further and you sum up for them. This is before ChatGPT, um, what you got out of it.
Yeah,
So it
yeah.
can't just be a report out like a school, but what this meant to me was, or this story in this book triggered my own memory of my stories.
Yeah, I love that. I heard a very famous Irish playwright once said he wrote a letter to a friend,
Mm,
and he said, "I apologize for the long letter. I didn't have time to write a short one." Right,
yes.
and it's really true, right? Because it's easy to say a lot, but it's really hard to say a lot with a few words, and that
Yes.
clarity, I think, is just so important in great storytelling.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Well, when I work with teams, I'll say, I want you to practice your story, the company's story, and then a case story instead of a case study.
Mm,
And ask yourself, is it clear? Is it concise? And is it compelling? And get feedback from an accountability partner and say, is there a way I could have made this more concise? And sometimes people like to show off how smart they are and use big words. And I, you can say that in 2 words, not 10.
yeah. Yeah. You talk about compelling. I want to kind of touch on this for just a second
Mm,
because I think from an emotional perspective, that's where decisions get made, right?
yes.
Yeah.
In deal making and what have you. It's the feelings that we connect with. That's really what makes the story compelling, right? Is our ability to connect emotionally.
Yes. Well, when you tell a story, there are basically 4 parts. There's the exposition, the who, what, where, when, like you're a journalist.
Mm,
Then there's the problem that every character in a story has to have. And this is the secret to making a story compelling. If the stakes aren't high enough, what happens if this person doesn't fix this problem?
mm,
Then nobody cares about the story.
yeah.
Then there's the solution. And then most importantly, there's some kind of resolution. What is life like for this person after their life has been transformed by an experience or a product or a service? Imagine the Wizard of Oz ending when Dorothy got in the balloon to go back to Kansas, the end. But no, there's that wonderful resolution story where she's seen or talking about, oh God, there's no place like home, and you were there, and you were there. That's why that story is a classic. But if you go back to why is it compelling? Because we have to care about Dorothy and her wish to get back home. The stakes have to be high enough. We're like, well, just stay in Oz. What's the problem?
Mm,
Right?
yeah.
You have to be invested in her quest and the people she meets along the way and the life lessons she learns. But at the end of the day, and that's why that, now has been remade into Wicked. It was a musical that became a movie. So when you look at stories like that are classics, and you go, why is this story retold in so many different formats? It's because people are seeing themselves in it, and most importantly, getting a life lesson out of it where, oh, I have, in the case of Wicked, what if the wicked witch that we learned in The Wizard of Oz wasn't always wicked? Your brain goes, what?
Yeah.
And the creativity of reframing a story, and that's what you do in business. You take, here's the old way of doing something, and here's the new way. Let's look at the Wizard of Oz through a new lens and imagine that the Wicked Witch of the West wasn't always wicked. And what if she wasn't wicked and just got that label attached to her, but then had to decide, from a moral dilemma, does she go with the wizard's lies or does she stick up for the animal she cares about? All of that nuance is in there, but the stakes are very high at the end of the movie, which is literally the end of Act One in the Broadway musical. So talk about leaving you with, oh my God, I got to see what happens next.
Yeah.
And if anyone's seen the musical, they know what happens next, but you don't care because new people are telling the story in a new way that is immersive with video and movie making that makes you feel like you're experiencing it a whole nother way.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, from an etymological perspective, the word emotion comes from the Latin word motare, right? Which means to move us to action.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
the purpose of our emotions is to actually get us to take action. Now, what I find interesting about this is not just pulling in the emotion into the story, helping us reframe things, look at it from a different perspective, but also the potential of the stories we tell ourselves.
Mm.
Yeah. And
goodness.
yeah, from a longevity perspective, I find that really interesting, right? Because how we live our lives really comes from the stories we tell ourselves to begin with.
That topic in particular really resonates with me at this stage of my life and age, because I think, well, in my 20s, I was so concerned about fitting in and wearing the right clothes and what do other people think about me and blah, blah, blah. Then ideally, as you continue to get older, you hit a point where you go, not so concerned about whether everybody likes me or not, or if I fit in or not. But there's a lot of internal dialogue going on.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought I'd make that list of 40 people under 40 by now, and I didn't make it. So not really happy with my life. We start telling ourselves a story of
Yeah.
not good enough. Typically, it's what the ultimate message is, but it's disguised in a lot of different ways. If I lost 10 pounds, then I maybe would feel good about myself. And if I got this book done, maybe I'd feel like I'd arrived, and all the things of so many of my years I was spent, as soon as this happens, I'll be happy.
Yeah.
And if I can give anybody of any age the ability to shortcut that and be happy right where you are and stop looking outside of yourself for the acknowledgments to feel enough, then you're truly free. So you're not attached to what your title is at your job. You are who you are. That's bigger than any title somebody could give you. You're not looking for those accolades to constantly fill up because you're already filling yourself up.
Yeah.
And you can buy into the story of, oh, well, now you're this age, you're no longer relevant, you're no longer, you don't know ChatGPT enough or whatever all the stuff is. Or you make a choice of, I'm the movie director of my life, and I look to certain people who continue to stay relevant, because to me, that's the whole secret. That I talk to a lot of people going, well, I'm going to retire, and then I don't know what I'll do, and then you see some people doing it, and you're like, oh, you don't feel relevant anymore. Meanwhile, you have all this wisdom to share to younger generations if you would embrace that role of, oh, what I have to say is valuable, and let me share it without the attachment to everybody having to follow. Everyone's got to go through their own journey. I get it. But there is something to be said for mentoring other people on that journey, and that being a huge gift.
Yeah, I love that. And this is something that you're experiencing a lot right now, right? Because what we're touching on here is imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
Right. And you talked about how you've gone through a different journey, from your 20s right through to now, how you look at life differently. How are you helping people across different generations tackle and overcome imposter syndrome?
Well, what I see happening is the imposter syndrome happens at a lot of different ages and stages. I wasn't aware of that when I was going through it myself. I remember my first real, oh my gosh, what's going on? How did I get here moment was when I got hired by Coca-Cola to speak at one of their summits. And they put this beautiful program together of all the other speakers and where we went to school and our books and blah, blah, blah. And the next thing I knew, I was comparing myself. And that is the gateway drug to the imposter syndrome. I'm like, oh, everyone here went to an Ivy League school, Harvard, Yale. I went to the University of Illinois in Champaign-Urbana, which is a good school. It's not Ivy League, according to my internal ego.
Sure.
And then I was like, my book did well, but it wasn't on the New York Times bestseller. And I went, where's the minibar? I'm going to eat myself into a stupor because I had so much anxiety. I'm like, the woman who hired me is going to get fired. I mean, I went down the rabbit hole.
Yeah.
And the only way I crawled myself out was to say, well, she's been at Coke for 27 years. She obviously knows what she's doing. She interviewed you. She saw your speaker reel. She saw something. If you can't trust yourself to be enough in this situation, maybe trust her that she saw something. And then finally, I put myself in the audience and I said, okay, do I care where a speaker went to school? No. Do I care how many books the speaker sold? No. I care about how they make me feel and if I learn something. Okay. Whoa, how do I not let myself do that again?
Yeah.
And how do I help other people not do it? So when I meet people who are right out of college and they get this job at a nice firm, and they're like, oh my God, everybody here is so much smarter than I am. I feel like an imposter. They're going to tap me on the shoulder and say, oh, we made a mistake. We shouldn't have hired you. Or I'll talk to somebody who's in their 40s and they just got a promotion to a nice management position. And they're like, oh, I feel not really ready for this. And what are other people thinking about me? The line I came up with for people who have a promotion and have a little bit of imposter syndrome is, you are perfect for this job. It does not mean you have to be perfect in it.
Yeah, I love that.
And I can see the shoulders drop. Oh, you're going to make mistakes.
Yeah.
But the people who decide who they're promoting saw something in you. You got to trust them that they think you're perfect for this now, not 5 years from now. And you'll figure it out.
Yeah.
And it's okay if you make mistakes.
Yeah, John, I wish you could have told me that when I was 20 years old. At my first job at an ad agency. It's so relevant what you said, that you just feel like someone's going to come. I visualize that when you said it feels like someone's going to come tap you on the shoulder and say, hey, we messed up. You actually, you're still in college. You have no idea what you're doing. And you're not dressed like everyone else here. You're in a blazer. You look silly. Get out of it. You know what I mean? Like, that's so relatable what you said, that imposter syndrome happens at multiple stages within your life. Yeah. It's not just when you graduate and you get your first job, or before you graduate and you get your first job. It happens, in your 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s.
And from a kind of spiritual perspective of the whole thing, you're enough. Even if you never did anything else, you're not creating something or doing something or achieving something to feel enough. If you already feel whole and complete and connected, then you take action to express yourself from a place of already being enough, as opposed to, I need to do all this because I have a hole inside.
Yeah.
And the motivation's completely different. But what it frees you up to do is not be attached to the outcome. If this doesn't happen, like even, like my friends that have kids and I love being their uncle, and I'll be like, somebody's like, oh, I tried to hit the ball. You came to see me play baseball and I struck out and I'm so upset. And I was like, my love is not conditional based on your batting average.
Yeah.
And nor your grades. If you get a C, it doesn't mean you're a C person. Sure. Oh, means there's something else going on, that you don't like this class, you've got to learn whatever. Well, sure. But it doesn't mean and that ability to, so even as an adult, at this stage of my life, sometimes I'll have it come up and I'll be like, if not now, when? Yeah. If you're not ready now, when are you ever going to be ready for this? So you might as well grab this opportunity, run with it. And again, not be so attached to other people's opinions and outcomes, and say, let's give it a whirl. And the irony is, the freer you are, the better you do.
Yeah.
We know that about speaking or performing. And if you're nervous, you're not going to do well. If you're holding on, dating, same thing. Like, oh, you're really needy and desperate. That's not really attractive.
Yeah, I've struggled with imposter syndrome, I think, throughout my entire life. Right?
Really?
Yeah, it's been brutal for me sometimes. And a couple of things that I've learned to conquer it or face it, tackle it. One is self-compassion. And learning to speak to myself. My wife has sometimes said to me, my own internal dialogue with myself.
Much harsher than you would be to anybody else.
Yeah, would you speak to the kids that way? If you were speaking to your younger self, would you say the same things? And so sometimes I I visualize in my own mind my younger self,
Oh,
and
it's
then
so healing.
and
Yeah.
then talk to that person
Yeah.
and say, what would you say to this person that's feeling this right now?
Yep.
And it's so much warmer and more encouraging and supportive versus the brutal language that we can use on ourselves, right?
And that goes back to, okay, I'm the movie director of my own life, and I have a great imagination. And the only place there's any peace of mind is in the present moment.
Yeah.
And if you really looked at your thoughts in a day and a week, how many hours are you spent reliving the past? I can't believe that person did that to me, said that to me, hurt my feelings, blah, 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 right?
Yeah.
Or that didn't work out, and I'm so embarrassed, and all the thing. Or I dealt with this with my parents. Oh, we're so afraid we're going to outlive our money. I'm like, you got money now. Let's stay in the moment. Let's not catastrophize the future, right? That you're not there. Be here now. Is there a saber-toothed tiger chasing you? No. What are you afraid of? You're you're playing out a horror movie in your head. So as the movie director of your own life, you go, cut.
Yeah.
When the movie director does that on the set, everything stops.
Yeah.
And so it's up to us, almost like the pilot of our, they got to pull up, right? If we're going down that spiral.
Yeah. I love it. There's a principle called the Dickens principle. I'm not sure if any of you have heard of this, but it comes from the story of the Christmas Carol with Scrooge. And the principle that it's really teaching is when the past, present, and future becomes sufficiently uncomfortable, which it was for Scrooge, right?
All right.
Then all of a sudden we're in a position where we can make some change, right? So, but I like this point that you're talking about of, in order to make that change happen, we've got to be in the present and in the now versus in the past or in the future.
100%.
So the next time you're experiencing anxiety of any kind, ask yourself, am I in the present, the past, or the future? 9 times out of 10, you're not in the present.
Yeah.
And I love what you said about the saber-toothed tiger. That's so visual.
Yeah.
I feel like I can see myself in that,
fight or
like,
flight response kicks in,
he's chasing me, you know?
Yeah.
So no, I love that. And I love what you said about, you said your parents are just are worried about outliving their money or outliving, you know, their success in life. I think that's one of the big reasons we started this podcast, the Longevity Lounge. We talk a lot about entrepreneurship and sales and this dream where everyone's chasing and trying to find different ways in longevity, financial longevity, health longevity. So that's one of the main reasons that we started that. So I love that you said that.
Right. Because if you have this mindset that I am, quote, living on a fixed income, my Social Security and my savings, whatever. Therefore, my choices are so limited.
Sure.
Yeah.
Because I only have so much money. Versus, Mom, you are an incredible person who can knit things. I bet people would buy little baby outfits for newborns that you could make, right? I'm not talking, and, Dad, you love to organize things, why don't you volunteer at the food pantry? We're not trying to generate revenue. We're trying to give you a purpose.
Yeah.
Now that you're not working anymore, to be of service. And then, oh, look at your health issues go away, right?
Absolutely.
So you're moving and that's a little exercise versus just sitting. And so getting out of that story that my life is ending because I'm this age. The flips, I look at people like Harrison Ford in his 80s, still working.
Yeah.
Not a choice. The man doesn't need money.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
He's in a TV show on Apple TV playing a therapist. He just did another Indiana Jones. And you're like, oh, when you find your passion that's expressing some creativity, that's ageless. Talent is ageless.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I love the tie with purpose and longevity.
Yeah.
I think it's so huge.
Yeah.
It's really how you live longer, is just keeping a purpose or finding a new one once your one that you've been working on is over.
And my friends that are the most healthy in older age are the most curious.
Yeah.
Reading, learning a new language. Wow, you're really curious about a lot of things.
Well, let me ask a question, John, because I'm interested in you being here, not just because you're a master storyteller and the pitch whisperer, right? But also you have demonstrated, you've brought that to life in your own actions and experience. You've written multiple books. You're a sought after speaker. You've become an expert in your niche. and you've crafted a life for you that is, enviable, right? It's attractive and aspirational. It's aspirational. What story have you told yourself to get to that?
Well, I never purposely set out to do something to make other people envy it. That's the first thing. So, and I try really hard not to envy anybody else. And so I'm always like, if someone else is doing something that I would like to do that I haven't done yet, I'm like, good for them. Even though we're not, bound by precedent to have something happen, it sure is great to see something like a Harrison Ford going, I'm living my best life at 80 and I'm still, relevant and creating. Yeah. For me, I remember when I moved to Austin 5 years ago in March 1st, 2020, and I had all these appointments scheduled and keynotes booked, and then the pandemic hit. And all the people I was scheduled to meet, that friends of friends, say, well, we're not meeting anybody now. And then all the live events are canceled. And I thought, oh, moving to a new city is stressful enough, let alone that on top of it, and revenue stopping. What is happening? And so I had to have these, and you're like, oh, the swimming pool is closed and all the things, the musical theater is closed, all the things that bring me joy. I'm like, oh, I've got to go back to some real basics here. So I was like, well, there's a beautiful lake here in Austin. Take my dog for a walk around the lake and start taking pictures of turtles. That brought me joy. And I was like, okay, what a fascinating lesson. And you think you need all these outside things. You think you need to be swimming every day and you need to be going to see live theater and be inspired. But what if this is it? You got to find the simple pleasures, and you're not publishing that picture anywhere except on your own Instagram account for your own pleasure. Yeah. As opposed to being attached, oh, I got to sell these pictures. No. And then shortly after, I got calls from clients who had canceled the live events going, hey, can you teach our sales team how to be good on camera? Because there's now all these virtual sales pitches and they're scared to death. And if you remember that time, everything was on back order. So my camera, my mic, the lights, all that I was like, I'm barely a chapter ahead of them. Yeah. But okay. And I thought to myself, oh, you thought you were done reinventing yourself. Nope. Got to reinvent yourself again and suddenly be able to create content on how to teach people to feel comfortable on camera and, the basics of being good on a virtual call, because we didn't know how long all that was going to last. And even though it's over, we're still doing virtual calls. Yeah. And, it's the basics of frame yourself, don't have 3 fingers between the top of your head and top of the screen, and make sure you have good lighting. If people can't see your eyes, they don't trust you, basic stuff that. And then I would hear salespeople going, oh, I can't stand doing a pitch because if the person's not on camera, I don't know what they're thinking or saying. And what if a competitor is listening? I'm like, woo, you are in the future. You are catastrophizing that movie, aren't you? No wonder you're scared to be on camera. Yeah. So talk about letting go of feedback. And I remember the first time I gave a virtual talk to, I don't know, a couple hundred people, and everybody was on mute. And I thought, oh, this is bombing. Usually I get a joke, or I was looking in the questions for a chat, something, right? Yeah. And then I started to learn how to make talks engaging virtually. And then the minute I was finished and everybody came off mute, they're like, oh my God, did I need to hear that? It's been so hard and so lonely. And I was like, oh, okay.
Thank goodness.
Yeah. We've all been there, huh?
Yeah. It's still landing. It's just not landing in the same format that I'm used. I think I talk about not being attached to outcomes, and now I don't even get to be attached to laughter as feedback. So again, I'm going to do my thing, trust that the right people are going to resonate with it, and not be attached to my self-worth as a speaker on whether that lands every time, and dial down my own stress on trying something new.
Yeah, that's so important. I mean, you've touched on a few interesting points there. I mean, right at the front of that, you were really emphasizing you've just pursued what brings you joy. I love that, because there's so much authenticity in that, and going, because the quality of our life is proportionate to the quality of our emotions. Right? Yes. So pursuing the things that make us happy and bring us joy and purpose and meaning, and then being willing to pivot, not keep ourselves in a box, but continually learn and adapt is just essential, right? Because, COVID was such a great example of that.
Totally.
Yeah. All of a sudden the unexpected happens and you need to do something different.
Yeah. When I guest lecture at University of Texas here in Austin, I usually am talking to seniors like a couple months out from graduation, and they're like a deer in headlights. So scared of the future. What if I don't get a job? What if this? What if that? And I say to them, this is the first of many disruptions.
Yeah.
Because I remember being there, and you think, well, as soon as I get a job, then I'll be happy and stable again, and I'll be in a routine. And I'm like, no, you'll probably change jobs, you'll move, you may get laid off. Who knows what's going to happen to you? But this isn't your only time this is not the worst thing in the world, but in this moment, it feels bigger than anything you've ever had to deal with and scarier than anything.
Yeah.
And you just have to say, I promise you'll have more challenging things than this, not to scare you, but to give you a sense of this isn't as big as it feels because you don't have that perspective yet.
Yeah.
And John, when you deliver these keynotes and these speeches, is that the one thing that you find people mess up on or get wrong? Is they catastrophize the future, like you're saying, or what is the one thing that they get wrong?
Wow. Well, the majority of the people I speak to are people in sales. And I would say the number one thing that they get wrong is they push out facts and figures instead of telling stories and wonder why they don't get traction. And when it's so logical, and they literally don't understand people by emotionally and then back it up with logic. And then if they get the concept of the storytelling, the second biggest mistake they make is they make themselves the hero of the story instead of a client. And I said, the client that you helped is the hero. You're the Sherpa helping them climb Mount Everest, or Yoda in Star Wars. That's your part of the story. Don't make yourself the hero of the story. Okay. And then the third step, biggest mistake they make is they don't have a resolution to the story. And then they bought the product and done. I'm like, where's the impact? Where's the resolution? Where's the testimonial? Where is the reason that's bigger than just solving a purpose of I need, to take vitamins because my bones hurt.
Yeah.
Oh, my bones don't hurt now. Okay. But what are you doing now that your bones don't hurt? Oh, I'm back playing with my grandchildren and riding a bike and all that part is missing usually in the story.
Yeah.
They stop at the solution.
I love that. So this great storytelling is both an art and a science, right? And you've kind of shared some steps here in what crafts a great message, but people struggle to get across the line, I think, in getting a compelling story versus a dry story.
Yes.
How do you help them cross? What are some of the challenges that people face in crafting that story right and getting it right?
Well, I tell people, depending on their age, to think of their brain like a jukebox. You and I know what that is. You probably don't.
Huh?
Think of it like a playlist for music. Either way, songs come out, but you need to have multiple stories in your head.
Yeah.
Like you have multiple songs. So you need the right story to the right person at the right time. So if you're talking to different audiences, a CEO versus an entry level, that story you tell the CEO is a story about another CEO. Not a story that I have one story and I tell the same story to everybody. That's not customized enough.
Yeah.
So that's the first thing is you got to write down your stories and collect them and look at your own life for when something happens that could be a story. One of the techniques I teach is using dialogue in a story so that it makes you have the sense that you're eavesdropping in on the conversation and are in the story with me. Let me give you an example. When I was selling ads for Condé Nast, I got to meet Michael Phelps at a Speedo event. And as a former lifeguard, I went up to him and I said, Michael, everyone says that, you're so successful as a swimmer because your feet are bigger like fins and your lung capacity is bigger than most people. I'm guessing there's something else going on. He goes, oh, yes, John. When I was younger, my coach said to me, Michael, are you willing to work out on Sundays? Yes, coach. Great. We just got 52 more workouts than the competition. Then I asked people, what are you willing to do to become an Olympic gold medalist in your field? Is it something other people aren't willing to do or haven't thought to do? So that's a little snippet of that story. There's more
Very
to it.
cool.
Yeah.
But the essence of that is the dialogue was in present tense. I actually acted out the dialogue, changed my voice. Young Michael looking up. If I simply said, hey, I met Michael Phelps and he told me he worked out on Sundays, not
Yeah.
nearly as
Yeah, it
impactful.
doesn't hit the
That's
same.
so different, right? It's such a little thing, but it's so different.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, when you tell the dialogue is the most interesting part of the story, right? Because it makes me feel like I'm there with you,
Yes.
meeting Michael Phelps and listening to this conversation.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's interesting. I've got a friend that I've known for, gosh, since 2011. We've been really good friends. He's a master storyteller as well, right? And when I would listen to him, he had this way of telling stories. It felt like it was just coming to him in the moment and rolling off his tongue. It was natural. And he had these little phrases that he would use that were short and punchy, but would kind of make you laugh or pull you in. There'd be emotive kind of little punchies. And at first I thought, man, he just made selling and talking and business building just sound so simple and straightforward because of his stories.
Yes.
But what was interesting was the more I got to work with him, the more I would hear some of these phrases of his used over and over again. And I thought, he's got a
Like
library.
a comedian, you've tested it out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Joke works. This line works. This soundbite is memorable. One of my big sound bites is I teach people how to go from invisible to irresistible. And in the middle of that is interesting.
Mm.
If you've ever been in sales, you know what that feels like when someone says, oh, I'm interested, Ben, send me some information. And then it's crickets. You don't hear from them again.
Yeah.
I said, that's like being stuck at the friend zone at work.
Yeah, it's true.
Everyone laughs, right?
Yeah.
That one line is what got me press and ink and fortune.
Wow.
Wow.
Ways to tell you're stuck in the friend zone at work and 3 ways to get out. Because our brain goes, I know what the friend zone at work and dating is. Well, maybe not you, Ben, because you just never had that issue. But I'm sure you haven't either, Caylee. But us mortals have had that issue in our dating life. And then we go, what? But friend zone at work, what the heck would that mean? Oh, I'm just stuck in the interesting zone and never get any traction. So it's your ability to take something that's known and put your own twist on it that makes it really, your brain goes, oh, that's new. And we love new things. That's what gets our attention.
Well, you've got so many great power phrases that you use, and there's such a powerful one that you've just used there to go, from to become irresistible versus simply interesting. Yeah, anyone that's involved in deal making goes, oh, that's the death zone right there, just to be interesting. Right? Yeah. It's and so you get right to the core of an issue, but with just one statement, which is so impressive.
Oh.
Help me understand your creative journey here for just a moment in getting to those core issues and being able to capture it in just a couple of sentences like that. How do you do that?
Well, it's funny because when I first started professionally speaking and I'd come off stage and people would say to me, you're a natural. And I would kind of flinch going, oh my God, you have no idea how much work went into crafting this talk and watching the video of it back and fine tuning it. And then I finally just went, thank you. And then I talked to a friend of mine that's a professional photographer and she goes, oh, I get so angry when someone comes up to me and goes, I love that picture. What camera did you use? As if I use that camera.
As if it's just the camera, right? Yeah.
Because no one ever asks the chef, what oven did you use?
Yeah, totally.
Right? So I would say that it's like any other skill. Whether it's writing jokes, writing keynotes, writing books, it's a process of what is a problem I see that I've experienced and have a story to go with that I see other people having a same struggle with. And then there's the whole other creative element of humor.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not a professional comedian, nor do I tell jokes. However, I find myself at my funniest when I'm not trying to be funny.
Yeah.
So I was just talking to a friend and I said, I read this research that, if you take a cold shower, it burns fat and fights depression and reduces inflammation. I thought, it had me, it burns fat. And he really laughed. And I thought, that was my reality. I wasn't trying to be funny.
Yeah.
And then I talked to someone who was a specialist in humor at work. And he said, oh, in the world of comedy, we'll say, if this is true in this world you've created, taking a cold shower burns fat. What else is true? And he said that you get a second laugh. The technique would be, oh, in this case, well, I stopped working out altogether and all I do is take cold showers. Right. And then people smile again.
Yeah.
So I realized, oh, there's a technique to that even.
Yeah.
So it's about being interested enough and curious enough to, so what is the structure and what am I observing that I could maybe use that structure that would resonate with people?
Yeah.
Just the imposter syndrome when I tell that story about, oh, when I rated the mini bar, people usually laugh. They don't know if they don't know that I don't drink, but I go to the chocolate. But it doesn't matter. I usually don't get specific as to what I go. I couldn't find the mini bar fast enough, and then people are in that moment, and then they do whatever they do at the mini bar.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that. That's so cool. That's so crazy that you're able to take yourself out of the situation for what it looks like for you and input the listener into what they would do.
Let them reach their own conclusions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's high level stuff, John.
Yeah. Yeah. Is there, in helping people craft their stories, because you've helped people, probably thousands of people now, right, over the course of the years, craft great stories. What is a common mistake that you see people make all the time, and how do you help them fix that?
The biggest mistake people make when they're telling a story is the stakes aren't high enough. It's just their issue.
Yeah.
Is this important to anybody else? No, but for me, it was life or death. I'm like, okay, you losing 10 pounds to fit into your reunion dress or whatever is probably not a compelling enough story to get press or to even write a blog about, let alone get paid to talk about.
Yeah.
So when I work with people on what else is at stake, let me give you an example. I was working with Olympus, the camera company that makes scopes with the camera technology for hospital stuff. And they said, we've got this equipment that makes surgeries go 30% faster. And we say that to doctors, and some of them are buying it, but not as many. And I'm like, what is wrong? I'm like, well, okay, step one, that's just logic. There's no emotion. And so I do a deep dive. I go, what does it even mean, 30% faster? How long is the average surgery? Oh, the average surgery is 3 hours, 1 hour, 30% faster is 2. Okay, now let's write another list of who benefits from something being 2 hours instead of 3. Well, the doctors are on their feet less. Maybe the hospital makes more money. The patient's under anesthesia less. And then I went, oh, ding, patient's family. And that was a personal experience. So I crafted this case story for them that imagine how happy Dr. Higgins was at Long Beach Memorial 6 months ago when he could go out to the patient's family an hour earlier than expected and tell them the scope shows their loved one does not have cancer, they're going to be okay. And if you've ever waited for someone you love to get out of surgery, every minute feels like an hour. And the doctor turned to the rep and said, this is why I became a doctor, for moments like this.
Oh, man.
And now that rep tells that story to other doctors at other hospitals who see themselves in that story and says, hey, that's why I became a doctor. I want your equipment too.
Yeah. Oh, that's powerful. And what an amazing example that emphasizes why data and facts don't sell, stories do, right? Because that moment, what you caught there was the reason the person wanted to become a doctor in the first place.
Purpose, yeah. But I see how I also just shouldn't take the first problem.
Yeah.
Like, oh, well, the doctors are on their feet less, the patients. Those are the obvious answers.
Yeah.
So what really gives the great stories is when you keep going, and what else? Who else benefits? What else is at stake? What else? What else? What else? I'll give you another example because I want people to understand how to do this.
Yeah.
I was working with Olympus again. They have, this was Honeywell. They have a fan in an operating room. And they were talking about how fast it spun and the particles, and they were seen as a commodity, talking to purchasing, blah, blah, blah. And I said, you put yourself in this commodity. You're comparing to other fans and how many, particles does it clean? And I'm like, what is at stake here? What happens if this fan doesn't work in an operating room? Oh, well, the patient could get infected. Room's not clean. Okay, that's a very dramatic problem to solve. And then I said two of my favorite words. You talked about my phrases. Anything else? Because I didn't know if there's anything else, but I just was curious. I just try not to always take the first answer.
Yeah.
Anything else? Well, yeah, now that you mention it, Doctors and nurses are in there doing surgery after surgery, and there's a lot of laser and smoke, and they could get secondhand smoke damage.
Whoa.
And I'm like, and this is before COVID. I
Yeah.
said, oh, now we have a new story that this fan, and you're going to talk to HR, not purchasing.
Yeah,
This is
there
the
you go.
fan that you need to buy to recruit and keep doctors and nurses, because I know that's a problem for you.
Yeah.
Because we care about our staff so much, we're investing in the most expensive fan in the operating room, so there's never a chance you're going to get any secondhand smoke damage.
Wow.
There you go.
See, different person, different story.
Yeah.
Dig, dig, dig. What else? It's all about the stakes.
Yeah. This is a huge takeaway. Just ask that question when we're crafting our own stories. What else?
Love that.
Yeah. And just dig deeper and get to the heart of the issue that connects feelings and purpose. And to your earlier point, it makes the stakes relevant.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because too often I think we tell stories where we diminish that and then it just becomes banal.
Yeah.
I had a friend that reached out to me a while ago, was thinking of writing a book and was asking for advice, right? Saying, yeah, any advice in the book writing journey?
You came to the right place. You're a great author.
Thank you. Thank you. And I said, one thing that I've learned, and it's to this point that you've just been talking about, John, I said, this might sound like unusual advice, but this is what I learned in the writing process. You've got to be willing to be courageous as a writer.
And vulnerable.
And he said, oh, what do you mean courageous? I said, because your stories have to matter. And if they have to matter, then you've got to be more vulnerable than you might be expecting.
Yes.
You've got to be.
That is the essence. You're like, Caylee's writing a story. I broke a nail today. Okay.
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly. Yeah.
If you're 17, maybe that's a crisis. But, as an adult, it's like, well, it's not the end of the world. But, it's all about how big is our world.
Yeah.
That's why it's so important to keep pushing the comfort zone out.
Yeah.
Because if we don't, it shrinks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then little things do become big problems because you don't have anything else to worry about.
Exactly.
100%.
Yeah.
The what else question's so powerful and so good.
Mm.
Because I think as busy as we get, or we think we get, it's so easy to take that first thing. It's so easy to take the, what's the surface level problem that we can just turn it around, add some verbiage to it, make it a little more exciting, and then push it out.
Yeah.
But instead, let's keep digging. What else? So we can get to that origin story about why the doctor became the doctor.
Yeah.
And how the patient's family is feeling.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Feelings matter. That's what drives everything. Yeah. Yeah.
So true.
This is huge. So kind of wrapping up, I'm mindful of time. We're getting to the end here. We've covered so much. We've talked about your formula for great storytelling. I love that point about making the stakes count, and not just being concise, but being compelling. Oh my gosh, that's so important. And your strategy for getting there, in terms of digging deeper, asking those extra questions to get to the real root issue that matters most. And I love how we've talked also about your storytelling that you've told yourself, overcoming imposter syndrome, grappling with all of that. And we've covered a lot here, right?
Yeah.
So as we kind of wrap up, as you think about our audience here, is there a final nugget or piece of advice that you'd have for them to help them craft a great story?
One of my favorite quotes is from Arthur Ashe, the famous tennis pro, who said, the key to success is confidence. Key to confidence is preparation.
Mm.
If there's one thing that's caused me to be successful in my career, it's preparation.
Yeah.
And so no matter what you want to do with your life and what story you want to tell, dig deep, do the work, do the preparation. That'll give you confidence that you're creating something new and not something surface.
Yeah. Brilliant.
Love that.
Brilliant.
Awesome. Well, John, where can our listeners find you if they'd like to follow along and learn more?
Sure. Well, I'm on Instagram as The Pitch Whisperer. If you can't remember my name or the title of my book, The Sale is in the Tail, you can just Google The Pitch Whisperer and my website, johnlivesay.com, shows up.
Amazing.
Awesome. We'll be sure to put links in as well so everyone can connect nice and easy. But John, this has been a treat as always, right? Always great catching up with you. And thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.